you are witnessing here is what we call an audience reaction. By its definition is how an audience interacts with a media product that they have consumed, and we'll be looking at different theories that apply to audience reactions. To name a few, hypodermic syringe theory, two-step flow theory, uses and gratifications theory, all are equally important, but here we'll be looking at something called cultivation theory, and a perfect example of how it works. So sit back, grab your popcorn, buy my mixtape and enjoy the show. Cultivation theory, originally founded by George Gerbner in 1968, this theory focuses on the long-term effects of overly indulged media consumption. It suggests that if someone spends too much time living in the media world, their beliefs of society and reality in general are similar to what they indulge in online. They seem to lose track of what is considered real and what isn't. In more extreme cases of more violent films, a study from the Daily Telegraph by Keith Perry in 2014 suggested that watching violent media can have a link to violent behaviour, but it can depend on how violent the individual is to begin with. This research link between the two reveals that those who are more affected by violent media can be led to believe that acts of violence and destruction can seem like the everyday norm and can come with little to no consequences. So basically, to an older, more educated audience, they may be able to differentiate the good and the bad, but when a younger, more impressionable audience is consuming the media product with no better knowledge, it can be seen as slightly harmful to them. For when something becomes popular, the fan base is bound to swell and become larger with time. People of all ages, races, walks of life, etc. will flock to see the newest craze. This will obviously bring both positive and negative viewpoints of the media product. Now you might be saying to yourself, psh, that is a load of hoo-ha. I watched both Powerpuff Girls and Tom and Jerry as a kid, and I've never wanted to smash someone's teeth in. Well, as true as that may be, not everyone can maintain a healthy hook on reality. And for one man in Oklahoma, his obsession with a film called Taxi Driver and one of the actresses led to a path that exposes the effects and damage cultivation theory can have on a very violent individual. Taxi Driver is a 1976 psychological thriller set in the aftermath of the Vietnam War in a bankrupt New York City, and it follows the story of a former veteran working as a taxi driver who slowly descends into insanity as we see his plans to kill a presidential candidate for his crush, as well as a pimp to a young prostitute who he becomes friends with. Even the film's director Martin Scorsese received great reviews for his film and was even awarded for Best Picture and Best Actor. Unfortunately for him, his film would entice an American man named John Hinckley Jr. to attempt to assassinate the 40th US President Ronald Reagan to appease his celebrity crush. According to the trial, John had watched Taxi Driver around 15 times and had over time developed an obsession with the child prostitute actor Jodie Foster, and felt strongly that he and the protagonist were similar. After reading that the actress was a student at Yale University, he enrolled in a writing course in an attempt to get closer to her. Numerous failed letters and phone calls later resulted in John's further descent into madness, and he believed that he had to become a national figure to impress Jodie Foster. Ronald and Nancy Reagan were at a fundraising event in Washington, D.C., where John opened fire on the president at 2:27 p.m. The first few shots hitting his press secretary, a police officer, and Reagan's Secret Service agent in the abdomen. The president was injured but survived the assassination attempt nevertheless, and John Hinckley was later found not guilty by reason of insanity and was placed under intensive psychological care for treatment. A perfect yet tragic example of cultivation theory. John's overindulgence in a film and desperation for love for his favourite celebrity caused him to create his own similar and mirrored version of the events of the film in reality. He becomes so disattached from society and the real world that he believed his actions would be seen as acceptable. Even in his last letter to Jodie Foster, he stated how, "The reason I'm going ahead with this attempt now is because I cannot wait any longer to impress you." After being told numerous times that she wasn't interested, he still persisted to extreme measures instead of accepting defeat and moving on. Alright, let's talk about something less depressing. Now, what we're going to talk about is audience responses to films. Now, first explored by Stuart Hall, he wanted to discover how people responded to different types of media texts, so movies, books, and television, for example. He revealed that some audiences were not passive, but was instead active. Stuart Hall found out the differences between the two, and revealed how an active audience engages towards deciphering the media text in deeper detail to discover any hidden messages, meanings, and semiotics that the director includes included. Meanwhile, a more passive audience is more likely to simply accept the messages that the media text gives to the audience without any objection. In other words, they don't care. There are many different types of media responses that can be applied. For example, The Last Jedi was possibly one of the most highly anticipated films of 2017. Millions getting the chance to relive the action and magic of the Star Wars franchise after 2 years of silence. The teasers, build-up and hype for the comeback, millions rejoicing as we saw the heroes back in action. And then when the film was finally released, it was probably the most divided mix-up of reactions the fandom has ever come under since The Phantom Menace. What can be seen as the most insufferable kind of audience response. This is when the viewer takes in the media material, understands it, but yet chooses to reject it and create their own opposite view on the media. Typically, this can mean that the media product isn't for the viewer nor the target audience. Therefore, this means that they are already looked down upon. Now, fanfictions can be a common output for these audience responses and, good God, never again. With The Last Jedi, a large majority of the fanbase insisted that Disney had ruined Luke Skywalker's character from the original trilogy. The antagonist Kylo Ren was but a poorly written character, as well as making the female protagonist Rey a Mary Sue-style character, and was simply powerful with no explanation or further character development. As a result, the film was received with a barrage of negative reviews, and even Mark Hamill, as Luke Skywalker by the way, expressing concern for the movie's poor writing, as well as disappointment of how we will never be able to work with Harrison Ford again in an interview with Down of Creek. Some fans went so far as to bully one of the actresses, Kelly Marie Tran, with sexist and racist comments due to her performance in the film, resulting in her to delete her own Instagram.
Why are you the way that you are?
Fans take up the very core of a media product's popularity, and can determine the success or failure of a product, as well as how much of an impact it has on the industry. As a result of this, it's inevitable that fan-made creations are just birthed into existence. Examples of fan-made works include alternate endings, fan fictions, additional stories, cosplay. Even before the days of social media, fan culture was a popular place for fans of all media to greet, meet, and share their works of art. And due to the mixed response the film had received, one side of the fandom had so many people, including YouTube channel Star Wars Theory, make their own individual stories of The Last Jedi and genuinely rewrite the entire film.
He takes the weapon, his mechanical hand shaking, observing it. He looks down at it as tears swell within his eyes. Mumbling something to himself that Rey can't make out, Luke says through fought-back tears, "Father." As he looks up at Rey, a single tear streaming down his weathered, hairy face, he asks her, "Who are you?"
Now, for the more positive side of the fandom, cosplay and artwork are an incredible and my favourite part of the community. It requires focus, great creativity, and can be the closest the fans can get to feeling like they are the stars of their own film. And social media can be a popular place to share these creations, but social events like Comic-Con and even Star Wars Celebration are places where these people can get the recognition they wish for, since everyone with similar interests and tastes can thrive in an environment that they feel comfortable in. Like the films they indulge in is an escapism from the outside world. This is where the viewer takes in the media product and chooses to agree with it. Most media material that links to this style of audience response is designed to make the viewer feel a somewhat happy and positive emotion, as well as set the foundation for a certain topic or subject matter. In most cases, this is to give radio, film, and television more replayability for the consumer. They need to draw the viewer back in to feel the same emotion they felt before. Radios always have an extremely happy theme in the morning so that the listener can wake up feeling the same mood, because you don't want to wake up feeling terrible like I do every day. Another example would be how most smoking adverts show the hygiene and health effects of smoking, like cancer. The viewer may either decide to take in the message and decide not to start smoking, or seek help to stop smoking. Now, The Last Jedi and Star Wars films' replayability theme comes from its ability to make the viewer feel like they are in another world and reality beyond our own, in addition to making the audience get hyped for the lightsaber fights and dog fights and space. It's so awesome! The Star Wars franchise has always been known to incorporate many different themes and styles of storytelling, whilst mainly used to appeal to many different audiences, whether that's been the fast-paced action, the romance between the characters, the plot twists.
I am your father.
Or just the out-of-this-world environments with hundreds of planets the Star Wars franchise has. To a more passive viewer, these features are present in The Last Jedi's action scenes, taking up most of the movie. The romantic theme established between Rey and Kylo Ren, twist of Luke almost killing Ben Solo after the audience has been shown two differing stories, and of course the planets like the rebel base on Dakar, the salt planet of Crate, Acto, where Luke stays, and the luxury planet of Cantonica. Henceforth, regardless of opinion, these incorporated themes can appeal to a wide majority of audiences at first glance. But again, like I said before, the more active viewer can decipher The Last Jedi. I'm sorry, Disney, but you gotta try harder. Come on, you got Rise of Skywalker coming, you can bring it back. You can bring it back. Hope you enjoyed this video where I ramble on about an audience responses which none of you will care about, but I've got to do this for a video assignment because otherwise I'm not going to get into uni, I'm going to die alone, and I'm never going to get a job. So just watch the video, give me your money.